Hey!
Hello, you beautiful man.
Hello, how are ya? Welcome back. I'm about to start the third sitting with Mr. Jamie Oliver. It's sort of going okay. It's definitely evolved a bit last time, and there's a sense of a sort of structure of a head starting to emerge. I think there are a few things wrong. The left eye as we look is a bit out, and the jawline's a bit wrong. Those should be easy to fix, and hopefully as I start to add a bit more colour and detail, it'll just become a bit more solidly three-dimensional as it goes along. That's what normally happens anyway. See how it works today with all the problems of Facetime, the flat image, and the distracting conversation, I find, is the biggest problem. But we'll see how it goes.
First week back in the office, brother.
How was it?
There's only 7 of us in there out of 150.
Wow.
It's quite nice to get back into some kind of routine. I actually got some proper work done this week. But I'm not going to deny that I've enjoyed the last 2.5 months.
Do you know, it's an interesting thing. I mean, I definitely found that you become much more aware of time passing, I think, when in lockdown, because you're sort of, you know, you mostly got yourself for company. I find something I was getting more done, but at the same time, I don't think any of us would want to be in a situation where we are spending our whole time cooped up like that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely questioned, do you have to travel? And whether that's nationally or internationally, I think that if a good outcome of this is that, you know, a third of the travel for work is deleted and that carbon is not put out there and you know, you're only going for the right reasons, not any reason, I think that's a pretty powerful thing.
Absolutely.
I was sort of swimming in, where was it? Down in Devon. And I just got out and this basking shark came out. They're absolutely huge things. And it was only about 2.5 meters from the shore.
In Devon?
Yeah.
You're going to terrify people with this story.
Well, obviously they don't eat meat. So I think they're plant eaters, but as far as I know. But to me, I didn't know it was a basking shark. Right. It just looked bloody massive. But I think with the weather changing and stuff, there has been some white sharks spotted around Cornwall, I believe.
We don't eat shark much in this country, is it? Because I've definitely eaten it around the Mediterranean. Would it taste different if it's a carnivorous shark rather than a plant-eating one?
Most definitely, yes. I think, you know, structurally the muscle fibers might be similar, but I think diet definitely changes flavour for sure.
Do we know if humans agree with sharks digestively? Because of course, you know, the shark must think it's a sort of food that it recognises flapping around like a fish, because there can't be that many humans falling into the sea a year for the shark's sort of muscle memory to remember whether that's better than eating something it's more used to eating, and therefore are we sure that it doesn't poison the shark?
If I was an animal, I wouldn't want to eat humans. I think humans are disgusting.
Full of toxins.
We're dirty, filthy bastards, aren't we, really? And we eat crap food and probably don't live in the best way.
We know that you know, foods that are well and naturally and well fed and reared, you know, free-range chickens versus battery ones, they taste better. Whether that's because of literally this is what they're eating or the stress hormones of the way they're kept and that sort of thing. So it's not only better for welfare, but it's better for our experience. Natural
behaviour, the ability to move, to develop muscle properly, the diet, of course. Being fit and healthy for sure will make an optimum tasting product. People talk about good and bad fats. Yeah. But you know, grass-fed cows, you know, is going to be way less saturated. You know, really good organic grass-fed beef has and can have more omega-3s than salmon. Genetically, our guts haven't evolved as quickly as our mind and our access. You know, our stomachs are still kind of like structured like our, you know, grandparents, you know, 10 generations ago, but yet, you know, they didn't have KFC on every corner and, you know, hydrogenated fats. This whole thing about, you know, we're already being, you know, having said, oh, don't worry, we're not going to have a chlorinated chicken and that sort of thing. It feels like we're now being kind of warmed up to accept it. My job's not to be political, but to sort of see and smell what's going on. But I definitely think there's something fishy going on at the moment because the government are saying all the right things, but they don't want to assure the public or farmers or anyone invested in public health, they don't want to assure them anything other than verbal bollocks. Boris just got all of his MPs to vote down an amendment that would assure farmers that they're not going to allow cheap imports, genetically modified food, the use of hormones in meat production. You know, it's a long shopping list of stuff that our farmers have adhered to and developed, and we've got some of the best farming standards in the world. And the idea of having loads of really much cheaper, lower quality American foods coming in, and it's not just America, it's any country, would definitely devastate our local boys and gals.
I wonder also if maybe the government are waiting to see what happens in the US election, because obviously having someone, the president there, who's so unpredictable and prone to suddenly making balmy pronouncements about protectionist trade deals.
We were quite lucky with Obama, weren't we?
Yeah, totally. Someone asked me the other day how we met. My recollection is that I think we met when you were cooking something for a dinner in California. I think it was something, wasn't it? Sort of like a... Yeah.
I did one of the very first Soho House parties in America before they had any restaurants or clubs there. And I was friends with Nick Jones, who started it. So we threw this party, and I think I'd met you in passing amongst friends of friends of friends. I think I had Madonna on one table, and I'm like, who am I going to put next to Madonna? It's got, because, you know, she's, you need to be on your ball, sharp and interesting and probably artistic to pull that one off. So I think I'd kind of singled you out for, what's the word? What would you were her
human shield
muse for the night.
And she was fabulous. The problem was I seem to remember I'd had a bit of a big night the night before, and therefore I was kind of like, when I think someone came up and said, we put you next to Madonna. I was like, don't worry, I'm actually hoping to have a slightly quiet one tonight. Like, no, you're sitting next to her.
Yeah, you got no choice. It was quite a British night out, wasn't it? Because it was sort of mid-90s, you know, cool Britannia. I think Britain was in a really good place then, actually, Johnny. I mean, there was lots of really progressive music, obviously art, even cooking and chefs, and everyone was kind of pretty open. I do miss those times, Johnny. They were different times. I think I was only one baby in then.
Yeah, was it early noughties, I reckon?
I reckon it was like 15 years ago.
And then I remember you rang me up about the Blair thing you were doing a few weeks, when we got back a few weeks later.
I didn't have any experience with dealing with ministers or politicians, but I knew that I had to work with them, or dare I say it, against them, to try and get school dinners turned around radically, because there were so many wrong things happening. But you were really helpful at the time, because I think, was it your father that was a very prominent politician?
He'd been a minister a decade before, and also I'd done a painting of Blair fairly recently and had to be around him quite a lot, and I'd noticed the way he did things. He couldn't say no to people face to face. That was the sort of thing I'd noticed. And I think you said to me later you kind of not exploited, but you kind of managed to avoid giving him any wriggle room by calling the cameras in straight away.
No, you're right. I did, and I think the narrative is that we needed to change the way that our 5 million kids were being fed every day. If you talk to any head teachers or teachers, they'll tell you that for those free school lunch kids, that might be the only meal of the day in Britain today. He was all right. He was very supportive. One of the most shocking things that has popped up time and time again with every president or prime minister that I've ever worked with in child health has been the consistency of the word or use of the sentence, make us and we will.
Really?
It's basically like, yeah, we can do it, but we don't really want to, because it's like going to cause some sort of argument with someone. So make us, and if it's a good enough story, we will. I still feel like a kid that grew up in a pub. You know, I didn't do well at school. You know, like I have a very simple, common sense,
for obvious reasons,
human way to look at life. So to me, the idea of, thank you. I didn't understand the fact that they were saying, basically you do all the hard work and then if it's good enough, then we'll just do that bit at the end. It took me about 5 years to get over that.
Does it still feel a huge effort when you have to do a kind of political campaign?
Yeah. It's probably the hardest thing I do, and no one would ever gets to see it, really. We've done some really important things, and thanks to the public's support. And the public, and certainly the public that I interact with, expect me to be the voice for them.
People trust you, I think, and they trust you obviously more than most politicians, because you have this track record now, getting, doing the right thing and persuading people.
That's definitely a massive advantage, but I have fantasies of being a carpenter and, spending my days making tables or chopping boards. And it would feel self-indulgent to simplify my life too much, if that makes any sense. I love it, and I admire, the sort of position that I'm lucky. I have an incredible platform to do stuff, but I think if I did it all over again, I don't know if I'd do it. I'm really happy with my lot, but I think it would be nicer to have a simpler life. I'm sort of at the age now where you start really thinking about your mortality and how many years of quality life you got left on the planet. And then if you get too into it, you start looking at how many hours have I got doing the things that I really love doing here and there. So I had my bloods done like a year and a half ago. And there was this lovely Australian nurse, and she was chatting about recipes of mine she'd cooked and her parents. And I've done quite a lot of work in Aussie, so she was absolutely lovely. And then she went to do the bloods, and I'm like, dude, just to let you know, I'm really not great on bloods. So anyway, she did my bloods. She goes, there you go, it's all right, wasn't it? And then I was going out, and I woke up with her slapping me around the face. She had massive veins on her head. She was sweating red. And and the alarms, the alarms were going off, and there was just like legs and skirts everywhere. And I was on the floor with my legs up. And she was like, bloody hell, I thought I was going to be the one to kill Jamie Oliver.
I did some work a while back when I painted people having plastic surgery. I spent my whole life looking at faces. I spent 25 years looking at faces from one point of view. And the surgeon said, do you actually want to come and see an operation? I was like, yeah, without really thinking about it. And then as I was going along there, I was talking to someone, they said, aren't you a bit worried about that? A lot of people faint when they see all the blood. I was like, I hadn't really thought about all the blood.
Were you all right with it? That's pretty brave.
Well, so the weird thing was, when it was happening, when it started, it was like I didn't see it. I was so interested in how they were doing it and what the kind of was going on, where all the muscles were connected under the face. Later that day, I came back and I'd been taking pictures as well, and was looking at the photos from the camera, and it looked so gory. It was like a horror film, and I suddenly saw the blood, and it was it had a completely different effect when I was looking at these flat representations of what I'd been seeing.
We're following that work that you did, because there was, somehow you made it beautiful, and I'm not quite sure how, but that's the genius of, I guess, your perspective and medium. But a lot of people, they would see your early work, oil on canvas, that's almost photographic, and then they sort of see how that develops over years, and you're meeting all these interesting people. And then you kind of go completely left or right field, which is sort of looking at really gory operations and facelifts and breast enlargements and sort of things around. I get the narrative, but it's quite a big jump, isn't it? From essentially what outsiders would perceive as the good life, then you're doing something that's kind of maybe not so mainstream and possibly never going to be as popular, but actually, what is it that made you want to go hard left?
I'm always interested in other things to do with faces and the many different types of stories you can tell with them. Obviously, the primary one is trying to convey what you get when you're looking at someone, whether you know them or don't know them, and the way we try to read them for their personality, for the story, for what's happening today, what's happened to them in the past, what might happen in the near future. I think it says a lot about the kind of pressures from society and from ourselves to look a certain way and be a certain way, and the sort of fetishization of youth and all that sort of thing. In general, being able to flip between different areas of work, I've always found a really healthy thing in my life anyway.
It wasn't that long ago where art, as in drawing or painting, printing, that was the only medium of recording things. You know, it wasn't that long ago before there was no photography.
Absolutely right. And I think that's something that's easy to forget when you're looking at old master paintings and stuff, is that, you know, this didn't look like a sort of, a kind of high art necessarily at the time. This was literally all kinds of entertainment and historical information wrapped into one. When the photography came around, that was the biggest change, basically. Suddenly, it wasn't the portraitist's job to historically record what someone looked like for posterity. It was almost like, actually, suddenly their job became to interpret. You know, and that might be stylistically interpret, it might be to caricature that person, it might be a bit of both. It was also liberating. And I think that you kind of like, then that same happened to apply to art more widely, because then you've got the Impressionists and then the Modernists and the Cubists and the abstract painters, that sort of thing. Suddenly painting could be anything it wanted to be. At the same time, there's a funny thing I think happening at the moment. Photos aren't things to necessarily preserve either. They're disposable. You know, I see my kids sort of, you know, they can like take a photo, share it, and then it's done. You know, it's like, you know, it doesn't interest them saving it for posterity. Our relationship is shifting quite quickly with photography. And then with new technologies, there'll be some different kinds of photography coming along in recent years, in the near future rather, which has captures things three-dimensionally.
I don't really like myself in 3-dimension.
Is that big though because we're not used to it? Because I always think it's a bit like hearing a recording of your voice.
Yeah, I think it's because we're not used to it. But when you get a sense of 3-dimension, you get kind of all different other measurements that kind of come into like, geez, does my hair really do that on my head? Does it sit on my shoulders like that? Fuck, that's disappointing. I don't know if you remember, but like, what was it? Like 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, like everything went HD. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, everyone just got a lot uglier. Everyone's like, gee, really? Is that, I'm sure you were 10 years younger than that. And it's almost like the information was too honest.
Yes, and it's not how we naturally see things, because we kind of like see certain areas that are sharp and everything else is a bit blurry or a bit abstract. We use pattern recognition to be filling things in. And it's a very interesting point. It's a bit like the like black and white versus color photography. A color photograph is almost trying to be reality, whereas a black and white one we know is a depiction of reality, not a proxy for it rather than the actual thing.
A little bit like, you know, if you look at depth of field, like where you see the nose and eyes sharp, but then from the ears and the background it falls away. I mean, you can say, yes, that looks nice, but really it's also allowing the whole picture to focus on an area and get like, it's focus, isn't it? That's what it really is. And the human eye does that. Even if you put your hand, like you're completely blurred now, take it away, you're back in again, and then, you're blurred again. So it is interesting, isn't it?
I wonder if in the next few years, whether it's the technology evolves or someone comes up with an idea for doing it, where we can represent those things in ways that are closer to how we actually experience it.
Yeah. But don't forget, that's also subjective, right? I'm colorblind.
Which colors?
Normally, blacks, aubergine, and greens is my problem area. So I was told as a child that I'm never allowed to be an Air Force pilot or a train driver.
But you can be a painter, an interior designer. Yeah, fine.
I made one boo-boo in my publishing career. I thought I'd used a grey on a book, and apparently it was a green. And I was convinced to this day that it's grey. I printed a million of those. It's like, oh, for God's sake. Can we have someone to approve all colour work from Jamie Oliver, please? Things like taste as well. We have super tasters. So they generalise by saying that you know your taste sweet and sour in specific parts of the tongue. And to be honest, we only thought there were 4 tastes until the 50s. When umami came along, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. But what's interesting as well when you study nutrition is when you look under like a microscope, like the actual molecular wiring of the taste buds is different.
So they react at different speeds, or
when you taste, your body creates electricity. And that electricity will fire the wiring in that molecule straight up to your brain. And so even the wiring distance is shorter for bitter and faster. Think about the way that food has changed now and diets and the ingredients that we have, you know, the ingredients that you had for thousands of years in Britain and then what you have now, where there's stuff coming in from all over the world. And you have also people that are super tasters. So they've got more taste buds per, you know, millimeter than others. So they taste more, they have more information.
I think, yeah, Mrs. Yeo's one of those, because and they get so much more flavour out of wines. Obviously, she doesn't appreciate the wine in the same way that we do, but she certainly will describe it in absolute precise detail in ways that you go, oh yeah. She can certainly smell booze on me on times when I hadn't acknowledged having any in an evening. But on the taste thing though, you said there are 4 primary tastes. So does that mean all the other things we get? Are those just smells then that we add on to the tastes?
Yeah, most of what we perceive as flavour is smell, and it's behind the throat. Bitter isn't just on or off. There's a whole range of bitterness, even like tannins in wine. From a molecular level, like the longer the chains, the smoother the bitterness. And the shorter they are, the kind of more acrid they are. And actually bitter is often thought of as a negative thing, but when you pair up bitterness with sweetness, then you have a much more interesting party.
It's coming on nicely, this. It's going to take at least a couple more goes if that's all right with you.
Mate, I'm all in. Maybe the last one, we'll be allowed legally out of lockdown. I can come and see you in person for the end of lockdown. And I can bring a microscope and see if you're a super taster.
That'd be amazing. Let's do that. You lovely man. Thanks, Joe.
Lots of love, brother.
You too. It's okay. I think I made it a bit better today. It hasn't moved on as much as it does sometimes. I think partly because I was enjoying the conversation a lot. I should maybe have just allowed Jamie to talk a bit more and thought about this. I was hoping to get it done in 4, which would be the next one, but I think it'll take at least a couple more. But I'm enjoying it, so I don't mind. I think, and at least it didn't go badly wrong today. I think it's a little bit better now, but I'll know for sure when I see it again later on.